The sudden loss of famous rappers often leaves fans and loved ones asking, what happens next? Well, the full course of the law usually tries to offer a sense of justice to the victims and to fans like you and I. But is that enough? Is that really all the justice they get? In this video, we'll answer that question. We're taking a closer look at the men who were charged with these crimes, revealing what happened to them after the spotlight faded. XXXTentacion. Jahzé Onfroy, professionally known as XXXTentacion, was a widely controversial American rapper with an immense cult following. Considered a pioneer of emo rap, he began to receive steady mainstream recognition until he met his unfortunate end on the 18th of June 2018 at the hands of 4 assailants. The hunt for the murderers of XXXTentacion was like something out of a movie. It involved multiple camera footage, social media, and the rookie mistake of not clearing one's browser history. On that unfortunate day, X drove to the Bank of America to withdraw some money before heading down to Riva Motorsports. Riva Motorsports was an upscale seller of motorcycles, boats, all-terrain vehicles, and scooters. After withdrawing the money, he was secretly shadowed by a dark-colored SUV containing the 4 eventual suspects: Dedrick Williams, Robert Allen, Michael Boatwright, and Trayvon Newsom. But these 4 men did not have the same role in the murder of X. They all had very specific roles to play, which contributed to their eventual prison sentencings. X got to the Riva Motorsports superstore and entered with his step-uncle, Leonard Kerr. Security footage showed that Dedrick Williams and Robert Allen discreetly followed X inside the superstore and offhandedly walked right past him as he was browsing motorcycles. The footage saw them coming into the Riva superstore and purchasing 2 black masks. According to testimonies, Allen and Williams were aware of the fact that their faces had been caught on camera. This meant that they did not want to be directly tied to the murder, so the task of killing X was delegated to the other 2, Boatwright and Newsom. About half an hour later, X left the superstore, entered his black BMW, and drove away from the store. The assailant's SUV drove in front of X's car, blocking him from exiting the dealership store while Newsom and Boatwright stepped out of the vehicle and demanded X's belongings. A brief tussle ensued, in which Boatwright and Newsom punched X several times, and Newsom began demanding X's chain. During the scuffle, X's step-uncle fled the car, leaving the passenger door open. After failing to get the chain off of X's neck, Newsom then ran to get into X's car on the passenger side where the door was left open by the step-uncle. Newsom entered the passenger side of the vehicle and stole X's Louis Vuitton bag containing $50,000 and ran back to their car. Even though the robbery had been completed, Boatwright walked back to X's vehicle, stood about 1 or 2 feet away, held his gun, looked X straight in the eyes, and fired multiple shots at him. The perpetrators then fled the scene in their SUV, and X was later pronounced dead around 5:30 p.m. that same day. Now it was time for the manhunt. The manhunt started with a $3,000 bounty for any information leading to the arrest of any suspects. Just 2 days later, the first suspect was arrested. On June 20th, 2018, the Broward County Sheriff's Office arrested 22-year-old Dedrick Williams in connection with X's murder. Williams was spotted driving his silver 2004 Honda before a traffic stop occurred. A car chase ensued, and he was detained shortly after. The officers tracked Williams down via the clothing he wore on the day of the murder, which included orange sandals and a white tank top. The police matched images from security footage to recent pictures from Williams's Instagram account, which featured similar bright orange sandals. He was also pointed out by employees of the superstore who said they saw him enter Riva Motorsports to buy a neoprene mask. 7 days later, Robert Allen was named as a person of interest in the murder case and was later arrested on July 26th. Up next was the principal murderer himself. On July 5th, Michael Boatwright was arrested by the Broward County Sheriff's Office on drug-related charges. But just 5 days later, Boatwright was visited by detectives while he was in jail and presented with his arrest warrant for the premeditated first-degree murder of XXXTentacion. This warrant was a result of his browser history. Just after the murder, Boatwright had searched for accessory to murder and XXXTentacion. Apparently, he searched for them because he was trying to reassure Allen that he could only be charged with accessory to murder since Allen was not the one who pulled the trigger. A month after Boatwright was arrested, the final suspect, Trayvon Newsom, was brought into custody. All 4 suspects were charged with premeditated first-degree murder, among other charges. Robert Allen decided to be a snitch and pleaded guilty to the lesser conviction of second-degree murder in exchange for testimony against the other 3 defendants. During the trial, among the evidence overviewed against the suspects suspects were DNA evidence against the defendants, Newsom's confession to burying the stolen money in text messages, Williams having a .22 caliber bullet in his home, Boatwright's phone's Bluetooth being connected to the murder vehicle, Boatwright and Williams' phone location being tracked to the location of the murder, a box of bullets at Boatwright's home only having 4 bullets missing, which was the number of times Onfroy was shot at by Boatwright on March 20th, 2023, almost 2 weeks after jury deliberations began. All 3 defendants were found guilty on all counts. Dedrick Williams and Trayvon Newsom were sentenced by the trial judge to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Michael Boatwright was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.
This court will sentence you to life in Florida State Prison.
1 for first-degree murder and 1 for armed robbery, and another consecutive 30 years in prison for other charges. Robert Allen, the final defendant, was sentenced to 7 years in prison, with credit for 4 years, 9 months, and 21 days served, followed by 20 years of probation. Takeoff. In the early morning hours of November 1st, 2022, American rapper Takeoff, best known as the youngest member of the hip-hop trio, Migos, was shot to death. The man accused of killing the Grammy-nominated rapper is 33-year-old Patrick Xavier Clark. According to court documents, Patrick Xavier Clark purchased plane tickets to Mexico just 2 days before being arrested and applied for an expedited passport. The state also said he was able to get the passport, and when he was arrested, officers found a large amount of cash on him. Houston police detectives, after announcing the arrest of 33-year-old Patrick Xavier Clark on Friday, claimed that the suspect had plans to flee the country. All these details were revealed in Clark's first appearance in court on Friday night. This was what Clark's attorney, Letitia Quinones, had to say about the allegation.
Investigators say that he had a passport and supposedly had bought tickets to go to Mexico. Any comment on that?
Yeah, that's true. However, there's other circumstances surrounding that. That was something that was already pre-planned, and it was canceled before he was arrested. So I think that's important. He wasn't trying to go anywhere.
Other key information concerning the suspect as well as the victim. Takeoff was also revealed in court. But before we get into the legal proceedings, let's take a look at the events that led to his murder. On November 1st, 2022, there was a private party at 810 Billiards and Bowling in the Green Street commercial development part of Houston, Texas. The party was for James Prince, known as one of the godfathers of the rap industry. He is the CEO and co-founder of the Houston-based record label Rap-A-Lot. It was evident that members of the Migos attended the party because earlier in the night, Quavo had posted a video in which he had been driving around Houston with Jazz Prince Jr., the second son of James Prince. Now, according to a television station in Houston, approximately 40 people had gathered outside the bowling alley after the party ended around 1 a.m. Quavo, whose legal name is Quavius Marshall, was arguing with a man identified as Michael Prince and 2 young black men over a game of dice. This argument and confrontation led to multiple people shooting their firearms. Takeoff was apparently not involved in the disagreement and was just an innocent bystander. At about 2:30 a.m., police received a call about a shooting at 1210 San Jacinto Street in downtown Houston. On getting to the scene, officers found a man shot and killed on the 3rd floor, just outside the front door of the alley. The man was identified as Kirshnik Kari Ball, better known as Takeoff.
Once officers arrived, they came upon a male who was deceased. That male has been identified as Kirshnik Ball, better known as Takeoff.
The Houston Police Department stated that Takeoff was simply at the wrong place at the wrong time, considering he reportedly wasn't involved in the game or the fight. He was shot multiple times in the head and torso. A nurse who happened to live near the bowling alley heard the multiple gunshots and ran to the scene.
You can hear my voice in the video. I'm a nurse. No, I'm a nurse.
She checked the rapper's pulse, but at the time of her arrival, he was already dead. 2 other victims were taken in private vehicles to hospitals, and they included 24-year-old Joshua Wash Washington, who was a business associate of Quavo, and a 23-year-old woman who suffered non-life-threatening injuries during the shooting. Patrick Xavier Clark was arrested and charged on December 2nd, 2022, about a month after the Migos rapper was shot and killed in downtown Houston.
So, yesterday evening, we arrested Patrick Xavier Brown, 33 years old. He was charged with the murder of Takeoff.
Clark was taken into custody on the city's east side without incident. Clark was reportedly the second person charged in connection with the shooting that took place at the bowling alley. A few hours before Clark's arrest, 22-year-old Cameron Joshua was taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of felon in possession of a weapon. Officers highlighted the fact that Joshua is not alleged to have been directly involved in Takeoff's death. During the course of the arrest, Clark tried to maintain his innocence, but detectives said he had a gun in one hand and a wine bottle in another when he was caught on camera firing his weapon. And it was those bullets that allegedly struck Takeoff. Detectives said fingerprints on the wine bottle are what led them to identify Clark as the shooter. Furthermore, detectives believe Clark's gunfire killed the rapper based on the direction and trajectory he was seen firing on surveillance video. On May 26, 2023, Clark was indicted by a grand jury for the murder of Takeoff.
Patrick Clark, the man accused of killing Migos rapper Takeoff, has been indicted by a Harris County grand jury on murder charges.
If convicted, Clark faces between 5 years to life in prison. Clark's defense attorney, Letitia Quinones Hollins, told CNN that the indictment was expected. We would ask people to remember that getting an indictment requires meeting a very, very minimal standard of proof when we get inside a courtroom and in front of a jury, where we will be able to put on our evidence and cross-examine the state's witnesses. Where the standard of proof is guilt beyond reasonable doubt, we expect the jury will come back with a verdict of not guilty. Clark remains under house arrest on a $1 million bond with a GPS ankle monitor. Pop Smoke. Bashar Baraka Jackson, aka Pop Smoke, was one of the most iconic hip-hop artists to come out of New York in recent times. With viral bangers like Dior and Welcome to the Party, it seemed as if nothing could stop Pop Smoke from reaching the top of the rap game. But while he was on vacation in Los Angeles, he was brutally murdered in what has been frequently described as the most senseless murder in hip-hop history. We're going to go into the intricacies of this seemingly avoidable death and what happened to the assailants who are responsible for it. On February 19, 2020, Jackson was renting a house through Airbnb, owned by the Real Housewives star Teddy Mellencamp and her husband Edwin Arroyo in Hollywood Hills, California. In this day and age, it can be quite convenient to track where your favorite celebrities are residing. With the use of social media, real estate sites, and Google Maps, celebrity locations can be pinpointed to a specific location at any given point. This is also made worse by the fact that certain celebrities, especially hot rappers, constantly display their lavish lifestyles to the public by posting their current whereabouts on Instagram or Snapchat. This was precisely what led to the death of Pop Smoke. The day before his murder, Pop Smoke and his friend Michael Duradola posted several images on social media showing off their luxurious Los Angeles vacation spot, including one in which Mellencamp's home address can be seen in the background. The rapper also posted a story on Instagram and Facebook of gifts he had received. One of the gifts, from the brand Amiri, showed the house's full address on the packaging, effectively giving out its location. Piecing together these clues, as well as the information about the house that was publicly available, the killers were able to track the rapper down and locate the house. He and his friends had a small party that night, with surveillance footage from the home showing that around 4:30 a.m., 5 hooded men, including one wearing a ski mask and carrying a handgun, broke into the house through a second-story balcony. The intruders initially encountered a woman. The woman who was staying with the rapper at the time of the murder testified that one of the robbers held a semi-automatic firearm to her head and said, "Shut the f*** up, do you want to die?" At this point in time, Pop Smoke was in the shower. She then heard a struggle coming from the shower area and heard Pop Smoke screaming. Pop Smoke ran out of the bathroom, and then she heard a loud pop and heard Pop Smoke fall to the ground. 2 other individuals then began to kick him while he was down. During the tussle, Pop was able to get up and run downstairs, but not before the woman heard 2 further gunshots. She saw Pop Smoke on the ground and screams for Michael Duradola to call 911.
Hello? Hello? I'm gonna tell him to wait for LAPD.
Pop Smoke was rushed to the hospital where doctors attempted surgery, but he was unable to recover from his injuries. Initially, it didn't appear that the killers made away with any valuables, which led investigators to believe that the murder was gang-related. But the more they began to investigate, the more it became harder to establish a motive for his murder. Was it a planned hit? Was it gang violence? Or was it a home invasion gone wrong? It closely began to resemble a home invasion, as Los Angeles mansions were often targets of home invasions and robberies. Later in the investigation, it is believed the suspects stole Pop Smoke's large gold watch and other jewelry before fleeing the scene. On July 9th, 2020, the Los Angeles Police Department announced that it had arrested 5 people in relation to Pop Smoke's murder. 19-year-old Corey Walker and 18-year-old Keandre Rogers were each charged with murder with a special circumstance allegation, which would make them eligible for the death penalty if convicted. The special circumstance alleges the murder was committed during the commission of a robbery and a burglary. 2 minors, ages 17 and 15, have also been charged with 1 count each of murder and robbery in juvenile court. The 5th suspect, 21-year-old Jaquan Murphy, who had been arrested, ultimately wasn't charged in Pop Smoke's death, but was implicated in an unrelated string of shootings earlier that year. In 2023, one of the juvenile suspects, who is now 18 years of age, admitted to killing the rapper in juvenile court Friday. The defendant, who was 15 at the time of the crime, admitted to a juvenile court petition charging him with first-degree murder. He had also previously admitted to his cellmate that he was the one who pulled the trigger. He said that the group was after his diamond-studded Cuban link chain. He revealed they caught Pop Smoke in the shower while he was naked and demanded the jewelry. Then suddenly, Pop Smoke tried to rush them and get away. This prompted the juvenile to pistol whip him with a Beretta M9 and shoot him 3 times. Eventually, they only got away with his Rolex wristwatch, which they sold after the robbery for $2,000. The man is expected to be held in a state juvenile facility until he turns 25. Lil Snoop. Born on July 13, 1995 as Adderrin Ross, Lil Snoop was a talented freestyler and one of the most promising young rappers of the early 2010s. Snoop was raised in difficult conditions, primarily by his mother, Denisha Chester, while his father, Charlie Brown, was incarcerated for most of his life and at the time of his death. Against all odds, Lil Snoop had a dream, and that was to become the next big rapper, and nothing was going to stop him. Even as a kid, he was already stringing up rhymes off the top of his head. Everyone who had come in contact with Snoop knew he was super talented, but nobody knew this more than his own mother. She was working multiple jobs and saved money to buy him recording equipment. She wanted him to devote his time to music instead of getting sucked into the streets that took away his father. In 2012, Snoop dropped his debut project, 16 and Running, and started to garner a lot of attention immediately. But he didn't want to just ride the underground wave. He wanted his name in the spotlight. His favorite rapper, Meek Mill, announced a show. Snoop didn't hang back to seize the opportunity. When Meek was about to leave after the concert, Snoop walked up to his van, knocked on the window, and slid his mixtape over. A few minutes after Snoop handed Meek his tape, he got the news that would effectively put his career on the path to the limelight. One of his friends called him and said Meek had shouted him out on Twitter. Snoop was lost in disbelief. He couldn't imagine what had happened. He bet on himself, took the chance, and it ended up paying off. Snoop then drove out to Meek personally, and Meek took him under his wing immediately. Meek Mill signed Snoop to his Dream Chasers label and started taking him around to learn the ropes and show off his mic skills. Snoop dropped his debut label project R-Nick, and everybody was convinced that he was the next to blow up. But this seeming success story was cut abruptly short by a video game session. On June 20th, 2013, at around 4 a.m. at the Maplewood Apartments in Louisiana, Lil Snoop was shot and killed. Investigators pronounced him dead on arrival after paramedics failed to revive him. According to reports, he suffered 2 gunshot wounds in the torso area. According to a statement released by Louisiana's Winfield City Police, officers responded to calls of a shooting at the Maplewood Apartments at 1901 South Jones Street at approximately 4:07 a.m. It was reported that an argument broke out during a video game and culminated in the shooting death of Lil Snoop. Charles Curry, Winfield Police criminal investigator, had this to say about the incident. With further investigations, I believe he was involved in some sort of altercation that resulted from actually were betting on video games. He also cited that the fight broke out at the apartment Holden was staying at, and a window pierced with a bullet is what remains. The 18-year-old upcoming rapper was in town visiting from Jonesboro when he was fatally shot twice in the torso. During a November 2022 interview with the Boss Talk 101 podcast, Lil Snoop's mother also confirmed that the officer said that the shooting allegedly occurred after a gambling argument during a private video game session of NBA 2K in a friend's apartment. 6 days after the shooting, on June 26, 2013, 36-year-old Tony Holden, the alleged killer of Lil Snoop, turned himself into authorities. He was booked into the Winfield City Jail on charges of first-degree murder, armed robbery, and illegal possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. On July 3, 2013, 21-year-old Edric O. Stewart, aka Lil E, was booked on charges of manslaughter in connection to Lil Snoop's murder. But according to Snoop's mother, Lil E was the one who actually pulled the trigger, not Tony Holden. 3 years after Snoop's death, Lil Snoop's mother gave her side of the story in an interview with XXL magazine. She said that during the investigation, it was discovered that the bullets that killed Snoop did not match Tony's gun, but they did match Lil E's. According to her, Tony was out on bail during the time of Snoop's murder, and he turned himself in for that reason, not the fact that he was feeling bad about Snoop's death. He got 10 years for being a convicted felon with a firearm because his bullet was not the one that killed Snoop. She also stated that the charge against Lil E was dropped. Edric received nothing. They dropped his charge, and he was only being charged with, I think, illegal use of a weapon in a violent crime. The judge stated which bullet it was, so it wasn't a question of who killed him. It's why is it that no one is being prosecuted for killing him? A very sad and unjustified ending to a promising career cut short. Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle was an American rapper, entrepreneur, and activist who popped up on the West Coast hip-hop scene in the mid-2000s with multiple mixtape releases that were met with moderate local success. At the age of 14, Hussle left home and joined the local Rollin' 60s neighborhood Crips, a subgroup of the larger Crips gang primarily based in his home neighborhood of Crenshaw. When he was 19, his father took him and his brother on a 3-month trip to Eritrea, a trip which Hussle has mentioned as being influential in becoming a community activist with an entrepreneurial spirit. Before his Grammy Grammy-nominated album Victory Lap, Hustle had built a career with underground credentials and an A-list network of supporters such as Drake, Snoop Dogg, and Rick Ross. Hustle eventually eyed a move toward the mainstream. He did this by partnering with Jay-Z's Roc Nation management company. But with the mainstream success in view, he met his unfortunate end at the hands of a certain Mr. Eric, a holder on the Sunday afternoon of March 31st, 2019. That Sunday afternoon, according to court reports and witness testimony, Hustle arrived at the shopping plaza for an unannounced visit, as he frequently did. While catching up with friends and employees in the parking lot in front of his Marathon store, he spent about 30 minutes signing autographs and posing for photos with fans. At the same time, a woman Mr. Holder was casually dating was driving him around the area just to hang out. The woman, whose identity was initially kept secret to protect her from threats and harassment, was identified at trial as Brianita Nicholson. As Holder and Nicholson stopped to get something to eat, Miss Nicholson noticed Hustle outside the store and casually stated in passing that he looked handsome. Mr. Holder did not indicate that he knew the rapper, but approached him for a brief conversation after ordering chili cheese fries at a nearby burger place while Miss Nicholson waited in the car. There was a brief conversation between the two men, and it appeared to be casual, relaxed, and low-key, according to witness testimony. However, it included Hustle telling Mr. Holder that there were rumors going around that he had snitched or collaborated with officers of the law. John McKinney, the Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney, stated that Hustle encouraged Mr. Holder to get the paperwork, showing he had not snitched in order to clear things up. It just seemed like a regular conversation, Mr. McKinney told the jury, but obviously it wasn't. As Nipsey Hussle and Holder finished speaking, Miss Nicholson stated that she approached Hustle for a selfie, which she soon posted to Facebook. Asked if she was aware that a fight was about to occur, Miss Nicholson said, "No, I wasn't afraid at all." Upon returning to the car, Mr. Holder told her to pull into another nearby parking lot so he could eat his fries. And after taking a few bites of his food, he walked back toward Hustle's store. According to witnesses, Mr. Holder confronted the rapper and said, "You're through," as he opened fire with a gun in each hand, hitting Hustle at least 10 times and then kicking him twice in the head. 2 others were wounded in the shooting. All 3 victims were transported to a hospital, where Hustle was pronounced dead at 3:55 p.m. Hustle's death was met with numerous condolences on social media by A-list celebrities. Former President Barack Obama complimented the rapper for his work in the black community, writing in a tribute, "While most folks look at the Crenshaw neighborhood where he grew up and see only gangs, bullets, and despair, Nipsey saw potential." Rihanna posted, "This doesn't make any sense. My spirit is shaken by this. Dear God, may his spirit rest in peace, and may you grant divine comfort to all his loved ones. I'm so sorry this happened to you." Other celebrities that chimed in include Pharrell Williams, LeBron James, John Legend, and Chance the Rapper, among others. A petition was started to rename the intersection of Slauson Avenue and Crenshaw Boulevard near Hustle's store Marathon Clothing to Nipsey Hussle Square. On the day of his funeral, the council announced it was set to be renamed Ermias Nipsey Hussle as Gatum Square to honor him and his contributions to the neighborhood. But what happened to the man who was responsible for this tragedy? 2 days after the incident, Holder was arrested by the Los Angeles Police Department and was being held in solitary confinement. On May 9th, a grand jury indicted Holder on 1 count of murder, 2 counts each of attempted murder and assault with a firearm, and 1 count of possession of a firearm by a felon. After a set of postponements, the trial started in mid-June 2022. Holder's attorneys argued that he did not intend to kill Hustle, but had acted in the heat of the moment. The prosecution argued he thought about it and he did it. That's all premeditated means. It doesn't mean he planned it for weeks. On July 6th, 2022, Holder was found guilty of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted voluntary manslaughter. After almost 4 years after the tragic murder, on February 22nd, 2023, Eric Holder was sentenced to 60 years in prison. FBG Duck.
Chicago rapper who was gunned down here on one of Chicago's ritziest streets. They say 2 other people were also shot when 4 gunmen, witnesses say, jumped out of cars and fired from just a few feet away.
FBG Duck was born Carlton Weekly on December 6, 1993 in Chicago, Illinois. He was most known as a member of the Illinois-based rap group FBG, which stands for Flyboy Gang Duck, was a member of Tookaville, a set of gangster disciples. His brother, a rapper using the alias FBG Brick, was shot to death in 2017. His close friend, he was friends with Tuka, who was also shot and killed at a bus stop in 2011 by TYMB. On the streets of Chirac, family and friends dying is almost the norm. This cycle of violence has plagued the city for decades, and it was the same fate that met FBG Duck. FBG Duck was beefing with numerous rap artists, including those in Glory Boys Entertainment, GBE, and OTF, Only the Family. Chief Keef, the leader of GBE, dissed Tuka Gang in multiple songs. In retaliation, FBG Duck and other Flyboy Gang members members made their own songs dissing Chief Keef and other Black Disciples. At the time, FBG Duck also had feuds with the late rival Black Disciples member King Von, along with the entire O Block. It was this feud with King Von that ended his life. An informant in Chicago police custody told detectives and FBI agents that someone affiliated with the Black Disciples street gang had offered up $50,000 to anyone that killed FBG Duck and later raised the bounty to $100,000. Now, the name of this person was not initially made public, but there were specific descriptions that could narrow down the person. Apparently, the person had bought custom-made necklaces for members of the Black Disciples O-Block faction. An FBI affidavit filed in March 2021 seeking permission to examine data from cell phones belonging to 3 suspects in the shooting noted that slain rapper King Von had appeared in a YouTube video posted days after FBG Duck's murder that shows him acquiring valuable O-Block pendants for his associates. So this definitely proves that King Von was the one that placed a bounty on Duck's head. The search warrant affidavit says that members of O-Block tore out of Parkway Gardens about 20 minutes before the shooting, leaving in a Ford Fusion and a Chrysler 300. Investigators also used automated license plate readers and various cameras to track the car's paths to the crime scene. At 4:26 p.m. on the 4th of August 2020, the cars pulled in front of Duck's girlfriend's sedan on Oak Street, and 2 men jumped out of the Ford and targeted Duck, and 2 others got out of the Chrysler and fired at the rapper and his girlfriend. Duck sustained over 16 gunshot wounds to his neck, chest, and groin, which severely wounded him. A total of 38 shell casings were found on the scene. In an attempt to hide beside a dark sedan vehicle, he was shot multiple times. Police arrived at the scene but neglected to apply pressure on Duck's wounds. He was still alive and moving 20 minutes after the shooting. The police neglected to perform CPR, allowing Duck to bleed out. By the time paramedics finally came to the scene, it was too little too late. He had lost so much blood, his body finally collapsed on the stretcher. After the first surgery an hour later, he was pronounced dead at 5:06 p.m. If he was flown to the hospital in a more timely manner, he probably would have survived his injuries. At the time of the murder, no suspects were arrested. In a federal racketeering and murder indictment in September 2021, months after King Von was gunned down in Atlanta, prosecutors accused 5 O-Block members and associates of killing Duck. They include Muwop, C. Murda, C. Thang, Zell Muna, and Kenny Mack. Zell Muna apparently committed suicide before being apprehended for the murder 2 months prior. A statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office for Northern Illinois said the 5 men, who it said were members of the O-Block street gang, publicly claimed responsibility for acts of violence in Chicago and used social media and music to increase their criminal enterprise. Right now, the case isn't looking good for the suspects. The prosecutors have stated that the murder count carries a minimum sentence of life in prison and a maximum sentence of the death penalty. The trial is set to start in October 2023, with the judge stating that it would be a very long trial. Young Dolph. Born Adolph Robert Thornton Jr., Dolph became a huge success as an independent star on the Memphis rap scene after releasing his 2016 debut album, King of Memphis, and that was just the beginning. Later on, Young Dolph had 3 top 10 albums on the Billboard 200, earning him a combined 2.6 million equivalent album units and selling 221,000 copies. Dolph also succeeded as an executive with the boom of his Paper Route empire and the rise of his protege Key Glock. The two released several projects, with 2019's Dumb and Dumber and 2021's Dumb and Dumber 2 reaching the top 10 on the Billboard 200. Despite his success on the artist and producer side, Dolph has seen close shaves with death, nearly losing his life several times in the past due to multiple shootings. In February 2017, more than 100 shots were fired at his SUV in Charlotte, North Carolina. He walked out unscathed and later recorded a track titled 100 Shots, detailing the incident. Later that year, Dolph was shot in Los Angeles, where he recovered from 3 gunshot wounds.
Shooting at a popular tourist spot in Hollywood. Tonight, a rapper is in critical condition.
The rapper's real name is Adolph Thornton. He comes out of Memphis. He is in critical condition, according to the LAPD, but not life-threatening injuries. He apparently is either still in surgery or about to get out of surgery after being shot numerous times in the upper body right across the street.
In early 2020, rumors emerged that Young Dolph was considering his retirement from music in order to spend more time with his children and was seen more frequently in Memphis. On his Instagram, Young Dolph wrote, "Highly considering quitting the music business because I really want to be with my kids 24/7." A year later, Young Dolph would be gunned down on November 17th, 2021. Having previously survived 2 prior shooting attempts on his life, Young Dolph would not be so lucky the 3rd time. It was a warm Wednesday, and Dolph was on his way to pick up up some cookies for his mom from his favorite cookie shop. Makeda's homemade butter cookies on Airways Boulevard CCTV revealed that 2 gunmen in a white 2-door Mercedes-Benz gunned him down. An autopsy revealed that young Dolph had 22 gunshot wounds from bullet entries and exits. Crowds of hundreds of people swarmed the scene of young Dolph's death for hours just to show how much of an influence he had. Officers had to prevent individuals from entering the area while they investigated. On January 5, 2022, police identified one of the suspects responsible for the murder as 23-year-old Justin Johnson and issued a first-degree murder warrant. A reward of up to $15,000 for information on the suspect was offered by the Tennessee authorities. Johnson had an established history of criminal charges and violence, as well as ties to organized criminal gangs. Justin Johnson has pled not guilty to the charges. Another suspect, 32-year-old Cornelius Smith, who was arrested for the theft of the vehicle used in Dolph's killing, was indicted on first-degree murder, weapons possession, and theft charges. The same day, Johnson was captured by police in Indiana after law enforcement received over 500 tips leading to his arrest. He also pled not guilty to the charges. 27-year-old Shundale Barnett, a passenger in the vehicle Justin Johnson was driving, was also arrested and was charged with being an after-the-fact accessory. 43-year-old Hernandez Govan is another suspect who was charged with arranging the killing of young Dolph. He was indicted on charges including first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in the killing of the rapper. However, very recently, a Tennessee 26-year-old Jamarcus Johnson man pleaded guilty to helping 2 other men charged in the murder of young Dolph. He took a plea deal with the prosecutors and pleaded guilty to 3 counts of accessory after the fact. Jamarcus Johnson acknowledged helping the 2 suspects, one of them being his half-brother, Justin Johnson, as well as Cornelius Smith, communicate after the killing while they were on the run from authorities. During his questioning by officers, Jamarcus Johnson acknowledged taking possession of the car from shooting suspect Justin Johnson, his half-brother. Jamarcus Johnson is the first person to plead guilty or be convicted in the shooting, which rattled Memphis and shook the entertainment world. The other suspects have all pleaded not guilty to the charges, and it is likely that the trial for those accused of murdering young Dolph will not occur until 2024 due to the severity of charges, amount of evidence, and number of defendants. If you enjoyed this video, check out our other awesome videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.